is all preparation, with each driver having his own ritual, readying himself for the ordeal, putting on the fireproof balaclava, for risk is always present. The mechanics, all busy hands, craftsmen's hands, make the last delicate adjustments, a last tightening here, a tyre pressure there, a wing. In theory, everything has been checked, down to the last infinitesimal detail. Drivers, team managers, team bosses, they all have their last-second rituals. Keaty of Alfa Romeo, relaxed. Frank Williams, intense. Mario Andretti, what has been forgotten? Colin Chapman of Lotus, concentrated. Bernard Eccleston of Brabham, instructive. Gérard Ducarouge of Ligier surveys the scene from the pit lane. Gabbiani and Giacomelli chat. Pironi looks over his car, and the preparations go on. Brian Henton puts on the Warrior's helmet, as does Mario Andretti. The protective gloves go on. In theory, everything is ready. Carlos Reutemann climbs into his car, and the cars head for the grid. Alfa Romeo, Lotus, Enzyme, Tyrrell, Ozella, Arrows, Fittipaldi, McLaren, Ligier. It is Sunday, the first Sunday of the new season, a Sunday of hope, of expectation. There has been a day of arriving. There have been 2 days of practice. There have been conferences, tests, adjustments, and the whole family has concentrated on just one thing, this moment. 3 minutes away. Last season is past. Winter, with its drawing boards and its tests on lonely tracks, is gone. 1 minute to go. In just 60 seconds, the drivers will be alone, completely alone. No advice, no questions. The eyes show the strain. It's all come down to final verities, and good luck to all. Last handshakes, the loneliness of the Formula 1 driver sets in. The track has emptied. All the people who have prepared this moment in time are gone, and the driver is alone. Each driver in his car, each driver there to win. As he sits there, the track suddenly seems big and empty. But soon it will no longer be. One more ritual remains, the warm-up. One last chance to check up on the engine, to lay down some rubber, and then to settle into the grid. Each car and driver into the position earned by their fastest laps in qualifying. 24 drivers, 24 cars. Millions invested, high hopes. The engines are revved up, the clutch held ready, anxiety, tension, planning, fearing. The red light, wait for the green, 3, 2, 1. The release from waiting cannot come quickly enough. The heart pumps, the brain works overtime. It is weaving, dodging, trying to get to that first corner first. And then it is the tunnel for 2 hours, thinking of nothing else from start to finish. The season has started. How will it end? 1/15 of the unknown, to be repeated now 14 more times at Buenos Aires, Rio de Janeiro. The streets of Long Beach in California. On the Dino Ferrari circuit at Imola, Italy. And in the tricky weather of Zolder, Belgium. And by the harbour at Monaco. At Jarama in Spain. In the capital of Burgundy, at Dijon, France. Or the classic Silverstone circuit in England. At Hockenheim in Germany. And in the Styrian hills of Austria. On the dunes of Zandvoort, Holland, and then back to Italy at the high-speed Monza Autodrome. On an island in the St. Lawrence in Montreal, culminate with all the marbles still at stake at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, USA. Thousands of miles of track to be navigated, survived, conquered, each driver against all the rest. Nations with prestige and pride at stake. A test of courage, of endurance, of technique. No championship in sport is so hard for an individual to win. None requires the same tenacity, the same consistency. Lose at Wimbledon, you can still win at Forest Hills as golfers rise and fall. But there is only one driver to be crowned world champion. And the rest are there, despite the races won, and the arms raised in triumph, to be disappointed. But to be a champion, as Alan Jones became in Montreal in 1980, a driver must have the temperament, the skill, the car, the backing, the courage, and above all, the will. A year later, it might be Nelson Piquet who sprays the champagne, but 1981 is to be a very special season. The questions will be asked, and it will take all season to answer them. There is always but one survivor. Only when the season opened, we didn't know who it was to be. Was it to be the 1980 champion, the doughty Alan Jones of Australia? Or might it be his teammate, the Argentine Carlos Reutemann, a 10-year veteran of Formula 1, always close, never a winner? Or perhaps the Brazilian Piquet, who had lost the championship to Jones at the very end of the season in 1980. It could be anyone. For a season, every season, begins with everyone equal, at least in their own minds. Jacques Lafitte, for Ligier, for instance, had always been in contention. Then there was Ferrari, always a force to be reckoned with. Ferrari were led by Canadian Gilles Villeneuve, whom many considered to be one of the top drivers of the sport, and backed by the serious, intelligent Didier Pironi. Ferrari were always a threat. There was the hugely talented Alain Prost, driving the turbocharged Renault. Some 30 drivers in all. Experienced drivers, old hands, with wins in the book, with experience, knowledge, savvy, survivors all, gathering for the new season. Along with some who classify as old boys, but who either, like Mario Andretti, have been in the doldrums, or, like Jean-Pierre Jabouille or Riccardo Patrese, have not yet equalled the expectations aroused by their talents. And every season, new boys, beginners in a hard trade like Siegfried Storr, or eager novices like Andrea De Cesaris. But it's not up to the drivers alone. It is a sport of men and machines, and teams which hire drivers. The teams have their own championship, won in 1980 by the Saudia Williams car. Some are famous, experienced teams. Two are rich in tradition, though both have been through lean years. The red Ferrari from Italy, in Formula 1 since 1950. And Colin Chapman's John Player Special Lotus. There are other teams equally big in backup, in resources, in ambition. The yellow turbocharged Renault. And the Talbot Ligier Gitane, which carry French hope of finally producing a French champion in Formula 1. There's the handsomely sponsored Marlboro McLaren team, reorganised this year, but with the heady memory of its championship days with James Hunt still alive. The team is headed by the Irish veteran John Watson. There's the Parmalat Brabham team, whose cars have been so close to the top in recent years. Brabham are owned and raced by the dynamic Bernard Eccleston, president of the Formula 1 Constructors Association. The team is headed by Nelson Piquet, long tipped for the top, and Mexican Hector Abaque. Its sleek blue and white cars are designed by South African Gordon Murray. There are teams which have been great in the past, such as Ken Tyrrell's, which once swept the championship with Jackie Stewart, but hasn't managed to repeat its triumphs in recent years and now races on a very tight budget. There are teams which were once great, dropped out, and are seeking to come back in at the top level, like the Italian Alfa Romeo, now headed by former world champion Mario Andretti. And there are the lesser fish in this international goldfish bowl. The German ATS team, Teddy Ips Theodore from Hong Kong and Macau, the Italian-sponsored British-run Ragno Arrows team, with Riccardo Patrese and Siegfried Stoll, a psychiatrist by trade, the March team, so prominent in the 70s, and the new Candy Tolman Hart entry, all conquering in Formula 2. All of them start equal. Of course, life is not equal. Not life as we know it. Not Formula 1 racing. Some start with more money than others, bigger resources. As in life, there are the rich and the poor. Some have high-spending, high-living sponsors. Others make do with bits and pieces, deals cobbled together race by race. Champagne and hot lunches, or tea and soup. Some arrive by motorised hang gliders. Some by helicopter. Some on motorbikes. And as every season draws to a close and a new one begins, each car is reinvented, which is what the engineers and the designers do. They are the men you see least and the drivers see most. Their work is done before the race begins and after each race is over, finding out what went wrong, what went right. The drivers are pure information for the engineers. The car does this, it doesn't do that. For engineers, the question is always, why? They too all start equal, except in talent. And even when the talent is there, the new ideas don't always work. Engines burn, or just stop. Things continually go wrong, in small ways and in big. The mystery remains. Why? Because when you look at a succession of Formula 1 cars, they all look the same, especially when they're moving fast. A 3-litre limit on engines, specified weight, height and width, a specified clearance from the ground, safety measures, rubber-filled tanks. It's when you look more closely that you see all cars have personalities. For instance, they have different-sized wings, set at different angles, different suspensions, in different configurations. And, of course, vastly different engines, with, hidden inside, 100 other differences. But all are equal. Supposedly equal in tyres too, which is where the sport is really cutthroat, in pursuit of the perfect tyre, mostly Goodyears and Michelins, but also Pirelli and Avon. Super qualifiers and wet tyres. Some with no tread at all, slicks, and some with very special treads for the rain, but all of them vulnerable to wear, to heat, to puncture all the weather. And changing them is a frantic business, which good teams can get done, all 4 tyres, in 16 seconds. There's one kind of rough equality, and that's called luck, good and bad. The unpredictable, as when Villeneuve misjudges a corner, spins, and takes the innocent Jones with him. Or sheer push and shove, as Reutemann tangles with Lafitte, and Lafitte is hoisted off. Or getting stuck in traffic, with Villeneuve pushed into a spin. And human error, a moment's costly loss of concentration. Brakes can fail or lock. Tyres can fall off without warning. And then you're out of it, some with disgust, some with pain, always with disappointment. And if all that isn't enough, there's rain, which gets to the drivers and to the spectators. The spectators are always a form of pressure, waving flags, taking pictures, looking decorative. But, for all the glamour they add to the pit lane, generally getting underfoot just when the drivers are at their most nervous and edgy. Like the constructors, the driver can hide from the world in his air-conditioned motorhome. But in the end, he always has to come out again, get back into that car, whether he wants to or not, whether he feels like it or not. Day after day, practice after practice, race after race, season after season. It's always the same profession, the same tensions, the same pressure, the same risk. For every moment on the track is a moment of decision. There's the right line for taking a curve, and it's always the same line. There's the right moment to brake, and that's always the last possible moment. And there is the right moment to pull out from behind and try to pass, and the right moment not to, when you can't. A moment to hold off a challenge, but still try it. And there is always someone in front and someone behind, each of them to be taken into account. And also, as Jones shows, how to pull away from the traffic. And always the possibility of failure, either your own or someone else's. Then comes the time for post-mortems, explanations, which the top drivers never lack. Nelson Piquet looks cheerful.
Ma è una macchina adesso che te là non è tan buono come Ford, perché c'è cose diverse.
But Carlos Reutemann, one of the real veterans, looks world-weary. He's driven for Ferrari, for Lotus, for Brabham. He's seen them all come and go. And now he's number 2 to Jones at Williams, which perhaps doesn't please him. There's the bright prospect of Alain Prost of Renault, much respected by his peers, a driver for the future, or for this season, all Gallic logic, imperturbable, unchanging. And the fiery Ferrari driver, the Canadian Gilles Villeneuve, natural successor to Ronnie Peterson as the fastest natural driver. There's the irrepressible Jacques Lafitte of Ligier, never far from the top, never so far at the top, and never afraid of controversy. And the former world champion Mario Andretti, now driving for Alfa in the autumn of his career, after a run of disappointing seasons. And Elio De Angelis of the ever-powerful Lotus team, a younger driver not yet at his peak. All of them, old and young, thinking this year is their year. In an atmosphere clouded not only by rain, which has been falling for nigh on 30 days, but by politics, which have been raining on the sport since its inception, real life returns 6,000 feet up at Kyalami. Despite politics, the race, the rain, and the risks are real. Just yesterday, Carlos Reutemann went out into this same rain and wound up with catch fencing around his neck and windpipe, thus coming as close to strangling as you can. Up front, waiting in the rain, are some familiar faces. Nelson Piquet of Brazil from Brabham is on pole, with Carlos Reutemann alongside him. And then some less familiar faces, Keke Rosberg, the Finn, driving for Fittipaldi. Elio De Angelis, who has taken over the #1 drive for Lotus after Andretti's move to Alfa Romeo, and Riccardo Patrese, driving for Arrows. Not far behind on the grid, Nigel Mansell of England in the 2nd Lotus, and Ricardo Zanino of Argentina, lying 7th on the grid, showing the Brabhams are still competitive even in the hands of lesser drivers. As they line up for the start, the big gamble has to be tyres, a bet against the weather. Will the track dry out? Will there be more rain? Do I go out on slicks or wets? Significantly, just 2 drivers opt for slicks, Reutemann and Rosberg. Just what the decision means is obvious from the start. Visibility is near 0, except for Nelson Piquet, who goes off fast and first. The rest, and watch the young Dutch driver Jan Lammers come charging up along the outside, can see next to nothing. John Watson can see nothing. He's caught in the wake of Alan Jones, nicely shut off at the first curve by Lammers. Lammers is having his moment of glory, but soon finds out how fleeting it is. But it's not going to be an easy race for anyone. The cars are trying to walk on water. The only real surprise is that Elio De Angelis, not so far a wet weather specialist, should be staying right up there with the front runners. Piquet seems to be running away with the race, building to his lead without challenge. But the rain has gone. There are bits of dry track, and Piquet's on wet tyres. Jeff Lees has his little appointment with the catch fences. Equally unlucky is the world champion, who comes in to change to slicks. He goes off, but he is soon to be back in again. The Australian is far from happy. Nelson Piquet, meanwhile, comes into the pits to change his tyres. And John Watson inherits the lead, the first time in some years that he's led a race. Like so many moments of glory, it doesn't last long. He too has to change his tyres. And that leaves the wily old fox, Carlos Reutemann, in the lead. He, it will be remembered, started out on slicks in the first place and just hung back until the track dried. Riccardo Patrese's Arrows is taken with consummate ease. And a few laps later, Watson is left. Behind Reutemann's Williams in the closing stages are the early leader, Nelson Piquet, who can't quite catch up, Elio De Angelis in his Lotus, and the surprising Keke Rosberg in the all-new white Fittipaldi, who doesn't seem very willing to let Carlos by. As for Frank Williams, whose cars are starting 1981 in much the same all-conquering spirit as in 1980, he doesn't look all that overjoyed. Maybe because his world champion made a series of wrong guesses. As for the Argentine driver, who would know from his expression that he's just won a Grand Prix? He even leaves it to Elio De Angelis to do the ritual bit with the champagne. Maybe he knows that the result won't stand. Between Kyalami in January and Long Beach in March, peace fortunately broke out in the Formula 1 family. Skirts were banned. Things looked good for the teams who hadn't raced in South Africa. They'd had time to comply with the new rules. Fortunately for the sport, motor racing is never predictable. It wasn't one of the loyalists who was on pole, but Riccardo Patrese of Arrows. A first pole for both driver and team. It was Patrese who took up the early running in fine style. And behind him, Jones and Reutemann. And then Reutemann and Jones. For lap after lap, Reutemann stuck to Patrese's tail. He didn't threaten him. Patrese was quite at ease. But after all, Reutemann must have thought, you can always hope for a mistake. Not that Ferrari were out of the running. Didier Pironi, having overtaken both Piquet and Villeneuve, was now fourth. As for Renault's Alain Prost, this was not to be his race. He went out early, to De Cesaris, who was to see the record for most crashes in a single year. Piquet was running steadily, but the real battle was still up front between Reutemann and Patrese. Greatly matured since his early wild and woolly days, Patrese was driving a superb race. But not long after, Piquet, doing a Reutemann on Pironi, lined up to pass him. Patrese's engine seems to falter. There is no let-up for the Italian. Reutemann, sensing the kill, tries it on once to see how Patrese reacts. Superbly. However, if it doesn't work the first time, try again. And this time Reutemann slips by. Patrese tries to stay with him. But now Jones, too, challenges and goes through. That puts the world champion solidly behind his number two. Not where he belongs. Not the safest spot for Reutemann. The unhappy Patrese makes 2 pit stops and then quits. The race is a third over. The pattern is established. 2 Williams up front, and Jones teasing Reutemann. Marc Surer, a tough, competitive driver, goes between Reutemann and Jones, and as they come up to the bend, Reutemann inexplicably makes a dreadful mistake. Surer has to come almost to a dead stop, and Jones simply accelerates past both of them. The rest is history. Piquet is a serene third. Eddie Cheever takes his Tyrrell into 5th. And the world champion is all smiles. Something he will definitely not be after Brazil, where the man he thought of as his chief rival, Nelson Piquet, is on pole position, a good place to be on a wet and uncomfortable day. With his teammate Reutemann second on the grid, Jones must have felt in with a chance, the more so seeing Piquet out on slicks. In fact, with his back wheels spinning, Piquet is left standing. And it's Reutemann, Jones and Patrese. Chico Serra was soon out of it, so were Arnoux and Andretti at the start. And Villeneuve, who had hit Prost in the same early pile-up, was clearly not going to last long. Up front, Reutemann and Jones were running clear, safe as houses. But behind, Pironi was taking up the challenge for Ferrari. A lap behind Prost, he decides to let the Renault driver by, forgetting the outside is one big puddle. Out they go. Nearer the front, John Watson of McLaren and Marc Surer of Enzyme, with Jean-Pierre Javier behind them, are having a ding-dong. Two super wet race drivers and lots of hairy moments. Until, almost inevitably, it goes wrong. For Watson. Graceful, but off the track. After his terrible start, Piquet was working his way back to respectability, showing the stuff of which champions are made. De Angelis, Surer and Lafitte take each other on. And Piquet battles past Alboreto. While Reutemann and Jones are strolling in the rain, there is drama in the pits. The world champion has no reason to push Reutemann. He's his number 2 after all. That's in the contract. And Frank Williams has shown Carlos the board, which Carlos doesn't see. Maybe it's the umbrellas. But regardless, win Reutemann does. So that when the race is over, it's a fairly lonely walk for Carlos. And on the podium it is Riccardo Patrese finishing 3rd, who sprays the champagne. Of Jones, no sign, and Reutemann does not look overjoyed. By the time the family reached Buenos Aires, Reutemann and Jones were on equal points and equal in dislike. But though this is Lole country, it was Piquet on pole. Nelson had ambitions of his own, Prost alongside him and 2 Williams cars behind. A thoroughbred start, with Jones heading off Piquet at the first curve. But it didn't take Nelson long to get by Jones. Nor for De Cesaris to add another excursion off the track. Reutemann soon blew past Jones, whose engine was down some 500 revs. The champion counter-attacked. But to no avail. The Argentine crowd roaring their hero on. As Piquet built up a position of solitary splendour, his teammate Hector Rebaque was beginning to threaten. First to fall to him was Jones. Prost was next on lap 10. While Nigel Mansell's engine caught fire, and Pironi too became a burnt-out case. On lap 15, to the horror of the locals, Rebaque overtook Reutemann too, on the straight. No miracle, but Gordon Murray's adjustable suspension, which created the band skirts on the track and lifted them off at measuring time. The Brabhams were so superior, the race was a procession. Alas, poor Rabake. A broken distributor arm did him in. Reutemann recovered second, Prost took third, and Jones limped home fourth. Arnoux was fifth, and before you knew it, Reutemann, smiling for once, is up on the podium while the band plays Happy Birthday. It was a moral victory for Carlos. The winning car, Piquet's, was unbeatable on that day. And Carlos's smile also says he is now leading the championship 3 points up on Jones. Imola may have been billed as the San Marino Grand Prix, but it was really a second Italian race, and marked by a row about skirts and Gordon Murray's device, which everyone was now honouring by imitation. And the good news for the Italians, 2 Ferraris working their way to the front as though they meant to keep the lead. Jones, having collided with Reutemann, was nowhere. And another victim was Guerra. The pain on his face is real. He's not the only victim. There's Prost, Jabouille, then Watson, Lafitte, and Villeneuve all come in. Villeneuve's decision being to go out on slicks. The gods, however, are against him. Rain has started to fall again, and he has to make another tyre change. Pironi now leads in the other Ferrari, with behind him Patrese, who has Nelson Piquet on his tail. Piquet tries it on, but Patrese holds him off. Piquet tries again. Again, Patrese survives, using superior acceleration up the hill. It is now very wet. While the home cameraman follows Ferrari, Piquet has got by Patrese. Incidents continue as Giacomelli hooks Chiva, and Chiva looks disgusted. And Giacomelli not a little guilty. The car you now see holding off Piquet is Patrick Tambay in the Theodore. And though it's a good purple patch, the truth is, Tombay's not in the race, and Piquet very much is, looking to catch Pironi. Piquet takes Tambay on the straight and starts to attack the Ferrari. Meanwhile, Gabbiani and Alboreto have tangled. And up front, the race is tightening. Piquet is at Pironi. And Patrese is challenging Piquet. Piquet tries every dodge in the book. Probes, waits, tries inside, tries outside. But it's lap 46 before Pironi, whose tyres are wearing badly, finally yields. Pironi takes the regular line for the corner, Piquet takes the inside for the next, and that is that. He yields also to Patrese. And soon to Reutemann. The wily fox has waited and struck. Thus, a meagre result for Ferrari. But a brilliant race for Villeneuve, who almost made it back into the points. If Imola had been splendid, Zolder in Belgium was to be a race of frustration, politics and tragedy. Frustration over rules, arguments about who was cheating. The tragedy started on Friday in Zolder's narrow pit lane. Carlos Reutemann quite blamelessly hit an Ozella mechanic, Giovanni Amadeo, when he stumbled off the narrow signalling edge. Caught between Reutemann's wheels, he fractured his skull and was to die the Monday after the race. His fellow mechanics demonstrated, and a number of drivers who shared their mechanics' concern joined them. While all this is going on, the cars, untended, sit on the grid. Who is in charge? What's going on? No one knows. Television is waiting, so is the race. Finally, the drivers walk back to their cars. And Piquet goes off alone. The grid reforms, but hardly in good order. Reutemann waves his arms. Due to the long wait, his engine is overheating. Piquet threads his way between the cars. And now it's Patrese, his engine stalled, who is signalling for help. On the left, his mechanic, Dave Luckett, comes to the rescue. The race starts anyway. Luckett has no business there, nor do the race organisers to allow the race to start. Panic has set in, and disaster. Jones gets by Patrese. Cheever follows. Mansell squeezes past the hapless Luckett. But from the back, Storr, unsighted, comes through. He brakes, but he has no hope. Watched by the spectators and millions of television viewers all over the world, Storr's arrows hits the back of his teammate's car. And Luckett lies sprawled on the track. You can see Storr leap from the car. You can see his anguish. Before he's led away. Piquet goes through as the ambulance arrives. And in the confusion, as everyone stops, Piquet gets in an extra lap. A restart is scheduled for 40 minutes later. More frustration, more delay. When the race finally started again, Reutemann quickly lost his pole advantage to Pironi. Pironi, Piquet and Jones have taken up the lead, until Jones nudges off Piquet. Only to have his own gears jump out, so that he ploughs into the barriers, from which he emerges with a badly burned thigh. With his main rivals gone, who should appear in the lead but Carlos Reutemann? Position he held to the end. And as the rain started to fall, although it wasn't that wet, the organisers were happy it was all over. Reutemann looked wet and miserable. In the circumstances, the podium was no place for celebration. With Reutemann firmly leading the table, the stage was now set for Monte Carlo, where a sport which had seen almost everything imaginable and unimaginable now had to face a fire in the kitchens of Lowe's, with the results you see, and the kinds of discussions in which FOCA President Bernard Eccleston is often involved. The yachts and posers were out as usual in force, while Siegfried Stohr slumbered and Dave Luckett got a get well message. At the start, there was the now ritual smash-up, with De Cesaris nudging Prost and Mario Andretti unceremoniously bumped into the rails. Narrow, twisty, slow, the Monaco circuit has been outgrown. No one can pass. Reutemann's wing got bent, and Piquet leads, until Jones carries him into a mistake. And then Jones is taken himself, as his engine falters, by Villeneuve's Ferrari. Gilles shows the wear and tear of the victor, but his weariness after Monaco was nothing next to his weariness after the race he drove at Jarama. He is 7th on the grid, with Lafitte on pole, and Jones and Reutemann second and third. Lafitte has a creeping clutch, and he's left standing, while Jones takes an immediate lead. Gilles, however, is already third on the outside. The circuit is tight, the weather very hot, the crowd small, and by the end of the first lap, Villeneuve is past Reutemann. Jones leads handily. Reutemann waits. Villeneuve is second. And that puff of dust you see is Jones. Later, he admits to making a mistake. Here, he just wants the mechanics to get him going again. But Villeneuve now leads. And though Reutemann has a third gear that keeps jumping out, he stays in touch. He catches up on the slow corners and loses out on the straights. There are more corners than straights, so Reutemann has a chance. But it's Lafitte who overtakes Reutemann and starts attacking Villeneuve. The rest of the race is a battle for survival for Villeneuve as Lafitte makes attempt after attempt to get by, somehow. And somehow Villeneuve holds him off. Here Jacques tries on the inside. But the race is over, with 4 cars, Villeneuve, Lafitte, Watson and Reutemann finishing within a second. The Ferrari mechanics applaud Villeneuve for a fine race, and the victor pulls himself together long enough to receive his laurels from King Juan Carlos of Spain. Was this to be the resurrection for Ferrari? Villeneuve has won 2 races in a row. Could he repeat the feat at Dijon? The position on the grid was not encouraging, 11th. But then none of his rivals were that well placed. Piquet was 4th, Reutemann 7th, and Jones 9th. Arnoux and Watson were on the front row, with Prost 3rd, and the skies threatening. Arnoux lost his advantage, thanks to the start light that went green, then red, then green again. And it was a wild and woolly start in which you can see Prost swerving and sliding like a duck on ice. As Piquet and Watson take up the running, and Villeneuve already tucked in behind the leaders. Jones was soon out of all contention, and Piquet was driving with consummate ease. While Prost was having problems with an unstable front wing, which can't have bothered him that much, as by lap 30 he started catching up to Piquet. Villeneuve's engine blew and he dropped out, while Watson was catching up to Prost. And that's when the rain began to fall. It was near the 3/4 mark when the red flag was shown, which meant a restart with the positions as on the last full lap. And in the pits, questions about tyres. Will the cloudburst pass? Another 2 laps and the race would have stood. The local organisers had a lot at stake. By the restart, the rain had passed, and Prost was on super fast slicks. Even without 4th gear, Prost's advantage was soon obvious. Piquet made a poor start and Prost really burst away, with Watson right up his exhaust. Watson momentarily takes over the lead, before hitting the curbing in his excitement. And after that, there was no doubt. Prost was clearly in charge. going on to win his first Grand Prix. Were Renault now the car to watch, with the faster circuits coming up? Or could Watson, who'd now been placed in 3 successive races, hold off the French challenge at Silverstone? There was a lot to fight for as the Formula 1 family moved to Silverstone for the British Grand Prix. The 3 championship contenders had fought themselves into something like a standstill, with Reutemann in the lead, Piquet second and Jones third. But Villeneuve had moved fast up the table, and both Lafitte and Prost were threatening from below. The grid didn't promise the leaders much. On this ultra-fast circuit, the 2 turbo Renaults were a whole second faster than Piquet, while the Williams cars could place no better than Jones 7th and Reutemann 9th. Not surprisingly, the start was dominated by 4 turbos. Prost, then 2 Ferraris, then Arnoux. Arnoux got by Pironi, and that made 2 Renaults up front. Then, at Woodcote, Villeneuve hit the curbing. And spun in front of Alan Jones. Andrea De Cesaris, seeing nothing, spins off. And Jones, hooked into Villeneuve, hits the fencing. While Villeneuve, by a reversal of poetic justice, soldiers on, though not for long. Note that Watson, on the left, just narrowly avoids the mess. For a while it is a Renault procession, with Prost in the lead, and then Arnoux. Piquet is gone, with a burst tyre. And, it turns out, an injured ankle. In the end, they have to carry him off. Piquet's accident put Watson 5th. Soon he overtakes Reutemann, which puts him 4th. Then Pironi falls, which puts Watson 3rd. As Pironi's engine goes, so do Prost's tyres. Subject to a double-time change. Watson is now 2nd, behind Arnoux, whose engine is giving him trouble. Finally, Watson passes him and goes on to become the first British driver since James Hunt to win his home Grand Prix. Reutemann inherits 2nd place, ahead of Lafitte and Cheever. Arnoux, rightly, looks unhappy. But not John Watson, who stayed on 2 hours just celebrating. Hockenheim was destined to be, for purists, the memorable race of the season, and one of the best in many years. Into a work of art go many intangibles. Rivalries between the drivers. Reutemann, Prost, Piquet. Technique, style, courage, disappointment. The German Grand Prix had them all. Plus a track good for cars and good for spectators. And a good clean start. The pecking order is soon established. As first Arnoux and then Pironi have problems. At Hockenheim, a driver has space and distance. He is conscious of where he is in relation to everyone else. And when Jones overtakes Reutemann, the duel of the season begins. Jones versus Prost. De Cesaris has gone off, again. And while Prost's turbo has more power down the straight, Jones is right up behind him into the stadium. Prost holds him off brilliantly. But Jones is at his aggressive best. Piquet and Reutemann are behind. Prost is coming up to a back marker, his teammate Arnoux. Jones is right behind him and sneaks brilliantly between the two Renaults. Now it is Prost chasing Jones. Reutemann's engine goes. Jones must have been anticipating victory, but there is Piquet on his tail. Something is clearly wrong with the champion's car. And Piquet goes past him with ease. Fuel starvation is Jones's problem, and though he tries hard, there is no remedy. Jones is soon sitting glumly in the pits, a victim of fate. Meantime, Piquet, making it sound easy, tells how he did it.
Well, I have a very exciting start, and on the first lap I have a little touch my car with Arnoux. He have a flat tire and I lost my front wing. And after that I tried to catch Alan and Prost, but for unlucky I hit a big piece of metal with the skirts on, one of the skirts, and took my left skirts complete out and make my car very, very bad. And I dropped back and I try to improve how to drive because the car was so understeer, and I try to throw the car. When I really find a good balance to drive the car, I try again and overtake Carlos and try to get Prost. And then lucky Alan Jones have a problem with the engine, and that's it.
Is there a point when champions, crowned or uncrowned, see the writing on the wall? No Jochen Rindt, no Niki Lauda, declining gates, difficult access. The natural beauty of the Styrian Mountains failed to pull a crowd into Zeltweg for the Austrian Grand Prix. Yet the race was full of possibilities. Reutemann looked to have the championship in his pocket. But recent failures had put a dent in his invincibility. Piquet had to think he had a chance. The track was traditionally fast and testing, and the grid showed two Renaults at the front again, not surprising at 2,000 feet, and the two Williams on the third row. As the race starts, watch Villeneuve on the pit lane side as he takes the lead from the two Renaults. But his lead lasted barely a lap. As soon as Prost challenged him, in this corner, his Ferrari failed to steer through and he went straight off, as did Reutemann, both men taking the escape road as though they were in go-karts. Prost, Arnoux and Pironi is the order. But Lafitte takes Pironi. Prost having dropped out with damaged suspension. Lafitte's target is now Arnoux, and the critical moment is to come on lap 39. Although attention is taken away by a spectacular fire in Bruno Giacomelli's engine. As Arnoux drifts out to take the fast left-hander, Lafitte pounces, he cuts inside and breezes by. And thereafter Jacques is not to be touched. He crosses the finish line with his and Ligier's first win for over a year. A popular win for a popular man, bringing Jacques up into third place in the table and tightening the championship up still further, tighter and tighter. Next stop was Zandvoort, on the chilly sea coast of Holland. And though the beach was nearly deserted, everyone knew decision day was coming up. Who in these old Dutch Grand Prix, which included such great aces of the past as Juan Manuel Fangio, Jack Brabham, and the great Jim Clark. Who would have predicted two turbocharged Renaults up front, Prost on pole, Arnoux beside, and determined to stay there if they chose the right tyres? Watch the back of the grid at the start, and you'll see what happens when a fast starter finds himself at the back. You can see the scarlet Ferrari and the orange and white Alfa Romeo as Giacomelli cuts across. He has no idea Villeneuve is there. The result is good spectacle, and luckily not disaster. Now another look. With Pironi and Tombe having tangled, both Ferraris are out, as Jones now rips by Arnoux. And another absorbing Prost-Jones battle begins. Patrese has had to drop out. And Jones and Prost are now side by side past the pits. Lafitte walks away, picking up his own garbage. What happened? Reutemann decided to try and take Lafitte on the inside. There was no room, and Jacques was not about to yield. A lap later, as Jones pressures Prost still further, Giacomelli has his own second shunt. Jones blows by Prost by dint of taking a risky route behind number 4, Alboreto. But like the smart driver he is, Prost waits to fight another day, using Alboreto again as the lever. Prost recaptures the lead. Not that the duel ended there. It went on and on. Borgard's tyres are appalling, but Jones's are going fast, and while Prost advances in state, Piquet takes advantage of the traffic to slip by Jones. With 6 points from his second place, Piquet is now even with Reutemann. As the Renault mechanics celebrate another Prost victory. Unlike Michele Alboreto, who has to hitch a ride home, both Prost and Jones seem satisfied with the standoff. The shootout between Reutemann and Piquet was expected at Monza, which produced a warm, muggy day for the Italian Grand Prix. Reutemann, with another super qualifying lap, was much better placed than Piquet. Prost is in the second yellow car. And very much in command, with Arnoux and Reutemann following. You can see the smoking engine that's going to put Villeneuve out. You can also see how Prost's lead is building up in the mist. Pironi has just got by Lafitte, but Jones has a harder time. Going on to scalp Pironi. Next on Jones's list is Reutemann, as Borgard goes off into the sand. As does Lafitte after a puncture. There's enough rain on the track by now to make conditions testing. When everyone had gone out on slicks, it got Arnoux in avoiding Chiva. And that put Jones second. Salazar, too, had a tyre blow. While from 9th place, Giacomelli has been working his way up the field. Here, in splendid style, he takes on Reutemann. Piquet, Pironi and Lafitte have all become his victims, putting him third. Now Lafitte battles Piquet. And Watson moves up. But Watson is shortly to be involved in what the drivers call a big one. Hot in pursuit of Pironi, Watson touches the curb coming out of Lesmo. His car goes sideways. And then backwards, into the guardrail on the opposite side. The rear of his car is ripped apart. The fuel tanks burst into flames. The gearbox and one rear wheel explode across the track. Alboreto comes through and hits the guardrail. It's the sort of disaster which would have been fatal before today's high safety standards, but John just walks away as Reutemann threads his way daintily past on the grass and Andretti goes through the middle. As the track dried out, Prost built on his lead, with Jones and Giacomelli in pursuit. Poor Giacomelli then had gearbox trouble. Behind Prost, Reutemann takes on Pironi. And succeeds. Reutemann is back in form. The last victim of a race so cruel to many was Nelson Piquet. His engine blew on the next to last lap, and Nelson just can't believe it. He sits disconsolate in his car. After an immaculate race, which he led from start to finish, Prost flashes past the finish line in the fog. Jones, second, picked up 6 good points. The Italian crowd, however it gets in, knows how to celebrate a worthy victory. And Prost, now among the leaders, knows how to acknowledge their salute, one of the marks of a future champion. And now, with everything at stake, only 2 races to go, it was off to Montreal, with the St. Lawrence River round the track and a veritable lake on it. Disappointment for some, because rain makes all cars more equal. The grid had been set on 2 sunny days and was headed by Piquet, Jones and Prost, 4 of the 5 with a chance at the title. As the cars moved away, Jones went between Reutemann and Piquet. And Arnoux was an immediate victim, sandwiched between the 2 Ferraris. Conditions were more suitable for skating than driving. And the story of the Canadian Grand Prix is one of risk, accident, retirements, miracles, and survivors. Lafitte and Prost are having a battle in the intolerable conditions. Until Lafitte takes over as the new leader. As always in these conditions, the man to watch is John Watson, here slipping past Derek Daly. Just before Villeneuve, behind him, has a fine spin. You can see the bent wing on the Ferrari that's going to play such a role in the race. With Lafitte still leading, Villeneuve now appears with his wing at a wild angle. He manages to control the car until it finally, mercifully, falls off. But the victory is Lafitte's. Watson was second. And Villeneuve, a brave third. Jones announced his retirement. Piquet moved 2 points up the table, and Reutemann's failure to score left it all up to Las Vegas, where Lafitte, too, still had a slender mathematical chance. In Vegas, the only one who knows clearly what he must do is Nelson Piquet. He must finish, and finish ahead of Reutemann. All Reutemann has to do to be champion is stay ahead of Piquet. But Jones, after the frustrations of a long, inconsistent season, begins Reutemann's humiliation here by taking up the front. And Carlos is already well back as Jones takes up a commanding lead. Patrick Tambay finds himself without the front end of his car. And for Jones, all is easy. At this stage, Reutemann is still just holding off Piquet. But with the championship at stake, all it takes is one quick pass. And Piquet is now past Reutemann. Jones is going out in a burst of glory. And everyone is passing Reutemann. Including Jones, who, remembering Brazil, probably delights in lapping the hapless Reutemann. Piquet manages to do the minimum necessary to finish fifth. Lafitte's chances evaporate. Mansell goes through in the Lotus. Alan Jones shows how champions should go out, dominantly. But the day belongs to Nelson Piquet. The Brazilian contingent celebrates, but Nelson's overalls are covered in vomit, and his face shows the exhaustion of his effort. He has to be carried out of the car. The points chart tells the final story. Reutemann is the loser by 1 point. Piquet is world champion by 1 point. Jones looks a happy man as the outgoing champion embraces the new champion and whispers what in his ear? That it all starts all over again next year?